зрителей мы вас приглашаем в конференц-зал. Начинаем презентацию. Саймон Кaastrup.
Good morning, everyone. How are we doing? Too early? How's your English? You okay with this? My Russian очень плохо, but лучше понять. Okay, so first of all, thanks for coming. My name is Kaastrup-Olsen. I am Danish, but I'll get to who I am in just a second. I'm here to talk to you today about how to bridge the performance gap between business owners and, I would say, developers. But I call them implementation agents because in business, there's typically more than just developers, and there's typically more than just business owners. So, okay, so roughly I'll just be discussing how to better merge the two worlds of business and IT into one. This is something I spent a great deal of time on when I was back in university some years ago. And yeah, so where are we today? Today we have traditional approaches that we all know. There's many more than just waterfall and Scrum. But waterfall and Scrum has basically been encapsulating what IT is in the mainstream area for the past 30, 40 years, presumably. I believe that both of them are wrong. Not always, but even though Scrum is being heralded as the silver bullet to everything, I believe that Scrum is being used wrongly by just about 90% of people who say they do Scrum. So to fix this, in my former company, we came up with a term for our contract that we call Scrum or Fall. And I'll get to this in just a second. So, who is How Far? How Far is me and a few guys from Europe. I've been living here in Kiev for the past 3 years, 3.5 now. Oh, hello. Some gentlemen in nice costumes. For 3.5 years. The first 3 years I used to work in Cyclum with traditional outsourcing as both a client service manager and also as an engagement manager. And to be honest, this is where I saw so many mistakes. Not because the developers were doing it wrong, not because Cyclum was doing it wrong. Actually, Cyclum, from a service perspective, did a really good thing. But many of the customers that do software and build software, they get it wrong so often because they think that I have an idea and I'll just tell it to these guys and they will build it and then they will walk away. So, my vision was to build a fantasy sports manager game setup. Our mission, obviously, is to do it fast, do it correctly, save as much money as possible, and focus on the business concept. And we decided to do this using Scrum or Fall, which is our method, so to speak. We are located here in Kiev. This is our main office, meaning we don't have a development, or let's say a business office in the United Kingdom or Spain for that matter. All the decisions are made here in Kiev by myself and my team. And we're responsible for defining the product, where it goes, to who are the customers, and how it should look and how it should feel. And then we have, of course, some marketing and some salespeople, business executives elsewhere in Europe doing the funding. But all decisions are made here by me and the team. Okay, so how many has seen this before? Quite a lot, right? Why is it that we keep seeing this stupid drawing? We see it everywhere. Probably all presentations around process, they show this thing. And I still think it's funny. It's just not as funny as it used to be. But it keeps being relevant again and again and again. So for some reason, for the past 10, 15 years, this is still irrelevant because people just don't get it. They don't get that people have different backgrounds, have different concepts and different competencies, and in general don't speak the same language, even though they're talking about the same thing. They end up understanding that same thing in different ways. And this is really why this thing is just relevant year after year after year. So, what I saw in Cyclum and what I've seen elsewhere in the industry is that typically there's a disconnect between the developers and the business. Now, of course, in traditional outsourcing, this is very much the case because the guys with the money, they sit somewhere else. And the guys with the brains and the power to get it done, they sit here. Now, that is bad. Now, of course, Scrum can help a little bit getting any of these things done. But if you were to point at one person who gets it wrong most of the time, it's actually the product owner or the designer, game designer, or it could be something else in the business, because this person is either not enabled, capable, involved, present, skilled, smart, communicating enough to work with the stakeholders that are in his company, as well as the team that he's actually a part of. Most product owners, they see themselves as the guy who has the great business idea, or they see themselves as the guy who just does the business logic for the team. He doesn't see himself as the representative of the product together with the team towards, if it's traditional outsourcing, the guys who ordered the project, or if he's actually, let's say, empowered enough to have responsibility for the design of the product, then he doesn't do a lot of other things. Now, my role, of course, is as a product owner or game designer, game director, call it whatever, it doesn't matter. What I try to be is, I try to, of course, not be disconnected from the team, aka, I'm living here in Kiev. I have a leveled, balanced involvement in the project. I'm actually there for all the meetings, all the things that go on, and I have separate meetings with other business stakeholders about our product. So I'm available all the time to the guys in the team. It could be the back-end guys, it could be the front-end guys, and I'm on all these things. The lack of understanding, I have a full understanding of the product since it's my idea. So if you get into a situation where a product owner doesn't really get what the idea is, you already know that you're probably in trouble. Often the product owner also has this, he wants to control the team rather than control the product. He should not worry about the team. That's the job of the project manager, to make sure that the team is on project. He should be talking to the project manager and the customer, of course, about how things are going, how things should be done, and how it should be done differently. And he should do so with, this is the way it should be done, not with, I think probably it should be done like this. So you need to be empowered in the role. And this basically is the same thing. Fails to communicate both with stakeholders and with the actual decision. Okay, so a little bit some numbers. Why does software fail in our industry? This was a survey done a few years ago with some around 600 CIOs and CTOs, and they were asked, why does your software projects fail and for what reasons? And they ranked these problems according to their own priority. As you can see, misinterpreted requirements is number one. So they didn't understand what actually it is that we're supposed to be doing. Number two is changing requirements. Then there's missing requirements. And then there's interfaces, design errors, and coding errors. Now that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But the sixth place, that's where the guys who actually make the decisions, they say, this is where the problem is, number 6. So my basic work previously has been telling clients, no, the problem is not in the code, statistically anyway. We might get it wrong in this project, but statistically, no. We got it wrong in 1, 2, and 3, something with requirements. And this is really the most important part. If you are in trouble somewhere on your project, somebody might be saying, oh, it's the team of it's the developer's problem or their fault. Statistically, it's not. But you can start looking at the missing roles in your team. Okay, another reason why software might fail. I don't know how many of you guys recognize this product. Before it came out, I was a huge proponent. I loved Google Wave before it came out because I love everything that's Google, or at least I used to. Google Wave as an idea was fantastic. I loved it. But the implementation, technically it was beautiful, worked brilliantly. But I didn't quite understand how to use it. And most of my other IT-savvy friends, we kind of played around with it. We didn't quite understand the power of it either. And lo and behold, of course, Mr. and Mrs. Kuzniak, of course, they didn't understand this at all either. This is not for normal people. And why did it fail? Because it was a brilliant idea, it was brilliantly implemented, but it was too bloody complicated. Okay? They wanted to do too many things with this product compared to what they actually needed to do to build a product. I won't get into what it actually was or used to be or could have been. So, with the statistics that show that we are not actually building software wrong, from a technical perspective, we're just getting the communication, the prioritization, and the planning, and the agreement wrong. And if we say that we have validated the idea okay, then where do we need to fix our projects to make sure we don't run out of budget and we don't run into problems? Now, requirements, the cost of changing a requirement is the time that you put into it. Writing a new one takes the same time. How many people are involved? 2 or 3, max. Design, well, 3 or 4 people possibly involved. Somewhere between 3 to 8 times the time to rework this. Now we're getting to coding. We've actually built something, now we're changing something. It takes us time to backtrack, re-implement, and make sure that everything is actually still working before we can continue. Development testing, acceptance testing, operation. You guys all understand why this is. Most businesses, they don't think about this when they start a software project. They just go ahead and say, no. I don't want to spend time on discussing my idea. I know what I want. Just get started coding. I mean, we need to be at the market here now. So if we don't start coding right now, we're not going to make the target deadline. Which is bullshit, sorry. So, what should you do? What should businesses do differently? They should do prototyping. Prototyping, motherfucking prototyping. And there are 3 different types of prototyping. There's concept prototyping, where you play around with the concept. Does it actually work? If it doesn't, you throw it out and you begin from scratch. You don't spend more time with that thing, you just walk away. Concept prototyping is for non-software. Throwaway prototyping is a little bit of the same. However, the best one for software is evolutionary prototyping, because you will typically have an idea, you will start changing the things that you do on this idea, and you will slowly evolve the product idea and concept as it is. Now, I'm pretty sure that most of you right now think that, yeah, we build prototypes in our company, and we do this. I'm not talking about technical prototypes. I'm talking about mock-ups. I'm talking about pieces of paper that represent your interface and how this product would work. The core concepts of it. That you can change, and you can go to somebody of your friends, your mom, your parents, or maybe even the target audience and say, listen, this is my idea. Play it through. Does it make sense? Do you understand it? They might not think that the whole way it flows makes sense, but they will actually tell you, no, but I think it's a good idea. I think it's fun to do. I think it's a great idea. It addresses a basic problem that I have. Boom! You have something that you right now know. You have a product. You know that you need to start investing in it. You need, to start finding more people. You can go find funding, whatever. But if you don't get that, I think you solved the problem, or I think this is a good idea. Throw it out. Start over. Don't go for funding. Don't go to development. Don't do any of the other things. Get it out. So, the first thing you do, or the first thing we did, was, I think on the second day of starting officially doing this company, we bought a whiteboard. It was the first thing I bought. Not a computer, not an office, not hire a person. I bought a whiteboard. And my partner and me, we started drawing on this whiteboard. We draw over and over, not too much, just a little bit. And we started talking to friends, and then suddenly we found people who were interested in putting energy into this. Now, whiteboards don't cost much. We bought a really big one. It was 2,000 grivna. It was a little bit expensive, but it had wheels on it, and it worked really well in my home. So the first 2 months of concept delivery in How Far, we actually just worked in my flat on a whiteboard. We took pictures, restored it. We took pictures, restored it. We did that over and over. Second, once you have the mindstorm done, you have the basic ideas. Try and visualize how will the core of the product you build look. How will it, in this case, game, how will it play out? So currently we have 2 products on this particular screen. One is one game we call Modified Stableford. The other one is called Fancy 18. Now, from a game perspective, they're super simple, both of them. They both follow golf. They both take data from golf. And they both put the output of the golf tournament up here. In this case, the user tries to predict how the golf player will do. And in this case over here, the user tries to predict which golfer will do well. and will then see how the golf player works on the golf hole, and then make extra points by following where on the golf course it actually is. Now when you sit down and talk to golf-interested people, I know Ukrainians don't love golf at all, because we don't have that here, but they said, this is fun, I like it, it's cool. And just on the whiteboard, they can see, well, it makes sense once they get the explanation done. So, now it's time to find the third person in the team, okay? At this point, I've spent 2,000 grivna on a whiteboard. My friend works for free, I work for free. And we've been doing this over the weekends for the past while. Now, we find our UX architect. Now, that's not exactly expensive to find somebody here to work with. So at this point, the cost of building this whole game concept is still very, very low. And if you actually are not afraid to get your fingers dirty, you can start working with Xure or other wireframing tools yourself for free. Anyway, so we came up with one interface called, well, basically the start screen. And I'm just going to run through some of the screens that we just iteratively came through before we actually had the final wireframe, so to speak. So this is what it looked like in the beginning. Now, not many here probably think this looks like a very interesting game. And most of you would think that doesn't look like a start screen. Neither did we, by the way. So we had the second version, and we kind of defined what is the process of the game. How will you actually play this game before you get there? And we came up with, you will have to have 4 phases of the game. You have to select a candidate, you have to compare that candidate against other candidates, you have to choose a team that's going to represent you in the tournament with the real data, and finally, you're going to have some kind of competition with others. We spent a lot more time on this. We decided that this process was not really a start screen. It was just explaining to the user how it was going to flow. So we simplified it a little bit, showed the user that it's a process, and then we told the user, you can see your live games here. You can see how many correct you have out of how many you have put in so far. And you can challenge your friends. So we kind of, we need some social too. And more wireframing. We decided to change a few things so you can actually see if you were losing and winning in different phases. And we kept doing this a little bit more. We added an account feature, of course, because these are things that are not core to the concept of the game. It's just social you need to have when you play games. When you play games, you need to have money somehow, but it's not core to the concept. It's not important. And then we got to the third version, where it started to look like a game, actually. We kind of came into, we need to have 3 phases, we need to copy things in there, and we need to have stake rooms where you can see what tournaments are going on, you can see who else is playing, you can go in there, you can compete with others. And you have a direct access to create your game by yourself, but check out what goes on. You can challenge your friends, and you can see what else is happening. Yet more wireframing. So, we ended up with this is the latest version of the wireframe. Okay? We started building this as a prototype about a month and a half ago. So, since 1st of June, we spent 2 months conceptualizing and changing and making these wireframes. And the impact to the developers of doing these major changes to the wireframes. Now, I have a lot of wireframes. I just showed you one screen, okay? But has been almost 0. No changes at all to them. For them, it's all the same on the UI part, not the backend. And we ended up with basically all these different things that are happening in this interface. I think between me, the project manager, and the UX architect, since 1st of June, we've spent 240 hours. I just calculated this morning. 240 hours on wireframe. That's 4 hours of my time every week, 4 hours of my project manager's time every week, plus the time that the UX consultant put in. It could be more that she put in, I don't know. But I've spent every week since June, 4 hours a week on average, looking and discussing wireframes. I've had wireframes coming out of my ears. But as it is right now, the wireframes are ready to be coded. They're already coded right now. There's a lot of details missing. But the raw raw concept of what we see here is actually already in our prototype, and it can be played. It's playable right now. There's just details missing. A lot of the things in the back end is not working because we don't need to create a complicated back end before we actually know where we're going to put it, how we're going to calculate it, how we're going to show it, in which way it's going to really play on the detailed level. Obviously the design, it's very ready for design. We have a designer right now who sits and looks at these wireframes, and he's starting to come up with visuals about how this will look. This obviously makes his job a lot more easy to discuss. So the strategy of our company was to go, because there's a gambling element to this to a degree. It's not really gambling, it's more predicting, but there's some money involved. An Apple Store won't allow money games really, and they will still take 30%. So we decided that we wanted to do this cross-platform, non-native, in not responsive design, but adaptive design, sorry. And we decided that from a visual constraints perspective, we needed to focus on the mobile phone first, because obviously it's the smallest screen real estate, and then expand from there to see how we could then do more. So after a long discussion in the beginning about which platform to design the UI for, we chose the mobile phone, but actually we had started with a tablet because this was my preferred platform for this. And then once we were done with the tablet, we started putting up all the screens that we had in chronological order. And then we started putting those screens next to each other to see which ones would complement each other when you were in different places in the interface. And then we came up with a mobile phone, a tablet, and a desktop, all showing different types of content. Now, I'm very happy with this solution because it means that we can have different types of content shown on different types of platforms, meaning that it's not just a scaled up version of the smallest shitty interface. It actually means that the desktop looks a lot more appealing in terms of content that you have, and you don't have, let's say, 9 steps, you only have 3 to start and finish the game, which makes it much more simple to play and much easier, and it gives you a better overall. So the platform is actually different from platform to platform. Okay, so this is what, just to show you what it looks like. This is not the latest, but it's very, very close. This is what the tablet looks like. We will put this on Facebook, I think, around the 1st of December. It will be something you can play for free. Again, you guys probably won't play it because golf is not that fun here, but somewhere in Europe hopefully it will be. And this is what the desktop looks like. So the decision was to not have chat on the mobile phone and not have chat on the tablet, because who wants to sit and tap away with chatting on those devices? It's still awful to do. But on a keyboard it's fantastic. So, once we were done with this initial prototyping and we started creating these wireframes, normally I would recommend start user testing with your wireframes on the users. Now, the guys actually started building the solution a month and a half ago, so we pushed them to finish the prototype. The prototype didn't just have stupid data on the front, dummy data, and nothing real. And I had a wireframe, user prototype test last week, and I had 1 billion changes, but they were all tiny, like things they didn't see, things they didn't understand, moving a button from here to here, creating another button there. But in general, the flow of it, they all said it's fairly simple, they could play it. And they started adding more ideas to it. I'm going to have a second round of user testing in 2 to 3 weeks, where we'll find out what other changes they can come up with. But basically, the last session I had was with a golf guy who sits in Australia. It's a Friday evening for him. He has a glass of red wine, and he starts talking about how he would add things to it. But at the end of the conversation, he said, yeah, I mean, he used to watch a lot of golf, and he used to play golf at a very competitive level. He said, you know what, I really like this, I love this idea. And he's playing with a prototype, and I know already now, 4 months into this thing, that this will work with a certain group of people. But I just need a certain group of people, I don't need 1 billion, I just need 60,000 users, that's all. So, you don't need to hire a big team to get this thing started. You can do this yourself with just a few friends. Just make sure that the people you have on your team are different in terms of personality. My personality is very messy, I'm very, like this. It's pretty evident. My project manager, he's much more structured and disciplined, and he finishes things. So I get to be the creative, crazy person, but he's the detail-oriented, focused, driving the process, not the lazy guy, so to speak. And he kicks my ass and I kick his ass, and we complement each other very well. The user experience architect obviously has a little bit of a different set of glasses because, first of all, she's responsible for the UI and the consistency of it, but she's also very detail-oriented. She will come up with different things. So, I think you all know this one from other presentations. It's a traditional Scrum approach. Now, this is for me not Scrum in this sense, at least not on the wireframes. So, what we started with doing, as you saw on the earlier whiteboard, we had the epic and the mind map as the basic foundation for how we were going to do this. And through that, we whiteboarded and mocked our way through all these wireframes. And we did this every week, every day, had these monster meetings of 6-8 hours, just the three of us. And at the end of the day, we came up with the first wireframes, obviously the second wireframes, and the third wireframes review. So we spent the 2 first months just building wireframes, not building anything else. And now you can get into actual Scrum. In this case, I love Scrum, it's fantastic, it gives you a good 1-week sprint, demo, success, everyone's happy, everyone understands what it is they're supposed to be doing, everyone can see where they should be going, and this is very close to actual waterfall development. But it doesn't have millions and millions and millions of pieces of text that you have to read and reread and reread and reread, because reading the same shit just bores you out of your mind. But if you can see what it is that you're supposed to be doing, then it makes sense. Now, many of you, if you have a back-end development background, will say, well, I still need to see how data flows. And yes, this is a different approach, and it's not something that I'm particularly good at, but the back-end guys can still see what it is that they're supposed to be doing in the interface. They don't have the same structured view that they would like to have, but at least the communication, the thing we talk about, all of us in the team, is the same bloody thing. That button is there, or that number is there, and that number pertains to this. And you can find it over here. And this makes communication and agreement in the team so much easier. So, okay, so the benefits are no changing requirements, no misunderstood requirements, very, very few missing requirements. Estimates, that when I ask the guys to come up with estimates, they are actually precise, they stick to them. More or less the velocity of the sprints that we have are estimated correct and delivered correct. And if you think that it's possible to do estimates for a project that lasts for more than 2 weeks, you're wrong. I've had more than 300 projects under my belt in Cyclone, and all the projects that we do there, depending on how we do them and how well we're integrated with the client, are underestimated, overestimated somehow. It is, in my worldview, practically impossible to do this scientifically. Customers want it, but it's not possible in the way that they want it. And of course, benefit, we get rapid feedback from potential first users, and this is so valuable from a marketing, from a product concept, go-to-market perspective. And yeah, most importantly, I don't have to tell the guys that they have to redevelop the last sprint and make these changes that are fairly major for the whole project, which makes the investor very happy that we don't have to waste our time, so to speak, week after week. So, my recommendations are, just to sum it up in brief, user test your product concept early, find out what your strategy is in regards to the platform that you're going to. Is it a multi-platform? If it is a multi-platform, is it different from the the concept, is the game going to be consumed different from platform to platform? In my case, I have a mobile phone, meaning I'm probably sitting in the metro somewhere, preparing my game while I'm sitting and waiting to get to my destination. My game only takes about 3 minutes to prepare, but it takes a whole weekend to actually enjoy. So you sit in the metro, you click away, you're filling it in, or maybe you're sitting at a party somewhere with your family, and the game is going on, you just want to check what's going on, you use the mobile phone. But when you're sitting at home in front of the TV, you're not going to bring your laptop, unless you have a MacBook Air probably, and you're working, to sit with you. But if you have a tablet, 22% of users have a tablet or a mobile phone with them when they watch TV. So it's ideal that the users that we have who play the game or enjoy the game looking at it why they sit in front of the TV and watch golf. And that means that different situations apply at different times, at different times of the week. So one device for one situation, another device for another situation, and a third device, the laptop, for a third situation. So the laptop in our case is actually meant to play a manager game that we're also planning to build together with these mini prediction games, so that you can, during your work week, when you spend your time on Facebook kind of just doing something else because you're focused on something else, you can go to how far you can play this manager, spend 10 minutes just fiddling around, setting up your team for the weekend, maybe put in a few predictions, and then when you get home, and you sit in front of your TV with your tablet, you can sit and then enjoy the results of what you did during the week. That's the whole strategy from our perspective. So it gives us a short-term, mid-term, and a long-term perspective when you enjoy the games on 3 different platforms. And this should, hopefully, engage the users at different times of the week and create stickiness in their mind. Oh, this one, the bottom one. Before you start building anything, make sure you have the data available. We have the data available, but not the level that we would like to. We can still deliver the projects, but we can make so much more with much better data. So before you start coming up with concepts, anyone in here, I'm pretty sure will have the technical know-how to figure out where to get that API from and how that data looks and how it's structured. But other businesses, they would just think, oh, we're going to build this game, and then you can start it, and suddenly, well, there's no data. Okay, so that's actually that's the end of it. I would like to just talk a little bit. So I'm going to ask a question. Hopefully, somebody's brave enough to actually put their hand up. So, how many in here actually use prototypes before you start coding in the company that you're working in or other things? How does it work? Does it work? Yeah? How much time do you spend on doing it? Yeah. Around 2 weeks of prototyping. How much work, how big is the work that you're doing? Okay. So you work with the customers who actually know that this is important to get done.
I would like to comment that probably the biggest time consumer in my case is that after a prototype is built, it is revealed that it is not similar to the end product enough to provide the validations. So we have to go a step back, rebuild the prototype, and then do it again. And it's always been a great question for me, decide when we should stop and go out with this prototype to some people around, or when we just need to do it a little bit more detailed. So actually, you guessed my question. I was going to ask, how do you define when a certain prototype is ready for its launch? I mean, for the people around you. Probably it's a constant process. Probably you call in your friends every day and, oh look, I programmed this. And they say this is shit, but this is good. And then you just do it every day. Or probably you just lock up in your room, prepare a prototype, and then just call in all your friends. So how do you do it?
Okay, so it's a long statement and a very good question. How do you know when is the right time to go to market and ask for review of your prototype? I'm guessing the prototype in this case is a front-end solution that can actually be played, not just papers on pieces of paper, right?
It depends on the situation.
Okay, depends on the situation. Okay, fair enough. I would say the answer to that is most cases right now, because you will probably already spend a lot of time on it. But the time when we went out and tested ours was roughly 4 to 6 weeks in. But that's arbitrary. It doesn't make sense. Okay. The answer is once the core concept. If you remember these 2 whiteboard drawings I had, those were 2 drawings I put on the whiteboard and I played with the guys before anything else started. So we played our game, the core game, without any interface, without any pieces of paper. We looked at the TV because it's a TV game. And we sat and played through with the rules, with writing it down. We predicted everything that we wanted to do before, and then we took a look at how it actually played out according to the TV. We did that the first week. So the answer to your question is, as soon as you have the concept nailed down, you should go out and test it. The reason is this. when I tested this, what we had in a wider audience with 15 users, first test, I got so much feedback from a few group of people that I actually went back and I changed, not major parts of the concept, but I added value to the concept so that what we put to the market now will have more real golf stuff, more stickiness for the user, making it more interesting for him or her to play. And if I had waited another 3 weeks, I would have waited 3 weeks more to do this, and I would have been well into another phase of the product. So I should have done this a little bit earlier, I would say. Does that answer your question? Are there any product owners here right now? Product owners, game designers, wannabe game designers? Game designer? Do you do any of this? What do you do?
Well, I'm working for a company, so I'm giving a concept document, and I actually design the gameplay, working with different departments, and actually like leading the project itself.
How many are you guys involved in this? This sounds fairly big, actually.
You mean the whole company or the project?
Just what you're working on. How many are you in that team who is involved
Well,
in this?
it depends because the team is always flexible. Because, for example, if we take artist department, okay, we have thousands of artists, and they can work on several projects simultaneously, like making art for them. So at once I can get about maybe like 8 artists. It depends on how is the deadline. Is it burning and we need to do it only for yesterday, or is everything okay? I can work with like 3 or 4 artists.
But it sounds like you're in a company like Playtech size. Like there's a lot of people involved.
Yes.
Okay. Makes the whole, let's say, startup part of it very different. Gives you some, let's say, advantages of doing it this way, but I also say it probably gives you some disadvantages in certain areas.
Of course.
Okay, any questions in general? Please. Okay.
I have a not so polite question probably, but why Ukraine?
That's, the question is not polite to your fellow countrymen. Honestly, I'm from Denmark. I'm from a country where developers, there's not too many of them, and there's a lot of people with my background. And everyone, it's just a fighting match about who screams the loudest. I used to live in St. Petersburg 15 years ago. I used to study Russian in high school, so I always had this fancy word proclivity to coming here. And when I had a project in 2009, I had to fire this Danish development house, and I had very little budget left, so I outsourced to Signum. And Signum and I worked really well together, and we had a good project. Technically and, let's say, implementation-wise, the product idea was not very good, not my fault. And I ended up coming here a lot, and then I met some people in Signum, and they offered me a job, and I decided, sure, I'll come back. So I have an interest in Eastern Europe, and I like it here, and I enjoy the abilities and the opportunity that I can have here. And so I can realize myself and my dreams. Anything else? Okay, thank you for coming, guys. Have a good day and the rest of the conference.